What's going on, everybody? It's New Year's. It's 2024. And last night, some of you maybe stayed up late, went out to parties, hung out with friends, hung out with family. I didn't really do much of any of that. I just kind of stayed in, did my own thing, and went to bed early. And here we are in 2024. Now, as we move out of 2023 and into 2024, there are some things that I think that we all should be doing, and we've been talking about it for the last week, like kind of rethinking things, resetting. It's a good kind of line in the sand. This is a good starting spot of this is a new beginning where I can make some changes. So whatever those changes might be for you, I hope you're successful with them. But with your collecting, I hope that you consider to make some goals, to, really think about the last year and things you did well, things you liked, things that you want to change. And that's really the focus of what we're covering today. In today's video, it is the question that I asked to all of you about a week ago. Now, I got a little behind on all of my comments. I was about a week or more behind because of the holidays, because of the traveling, going and seeing family in different places, spending a lot of time. That's the one place that I got a little bit behind, but I'm now caught up. So I should be fully caught up to all of those comments. And in reading over those comments over the last couple of days and getting caught up, some of you had some really interesting things to say about what your takeaways from 2023 were. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is looking back in 2023, what are your big takeaways? What are the things that you learned that you're going to consider moving forward? And that's a big piece of this reset of a new year, is it's that opportunity to go, let's reflect, and then what might we do different moving forward? Great answers this week. Really, really interesting things to say, which we're going to cover. If you did not go to my Whatnot show on Friday, we had a blast. A bunch of you showed up. Most of the night, there were 50 to 55 people in the room. We ran for over 2 hours, sold about 80 cards and autographs and different things. It was super fun. Thanks to all of you that came out, and especially to those of you that bought something. All your stuff is packed up. It's ready to go out in the mail. I put the cardboard around stuff to protect it. I did all the bubble wrap. It's all packed up. Now I just need the post office to open up, but obviously today is a holiday. So that stuff will be going out first thing tomorrow morning. And you guys got some cool stuff. And it was definitely fun to interact, get some smiles, share some stories. I'll do it again. If you missed out on that one, I will do another one, but give me a little bit of time. I don't want to do it too often. I might do it, maybe every month and a half or so. It's kind of what I'm thinking. And maybe every month to month and a half. So that is something that I will let you know when we get closer. Okay. So also, you guys keep spoiling me, and my buddy sent me this. Isn't that a cool looking card? I mean, it's obviously Bob Gibson. They're beautiful. The way they do cards nowadays is absolutely beautiful. So I appreciate you, my friend, for sending that to me. Your note in there made me chuckle. And you guys just continue to shower me with stuff. Also, my T206 Greg card, right? I got the Greg Miller T206 midlife card. They've been ordered. They have been ordered, and they are being printed, and they should be here soon. When they're here, I will give you information on how to get one if you're interested, how to get me your email or your mailing address and stuff so I can send it out to you. More on that once they arrive. I'll show them to you. If you still want one, then at that point, I will let you know how to get me the information needed. Also, we're going to do a December pickups. The midlife card community December pickups is coming, but give me a minute on that. I will announce soon how to submit your stuff for your December pickup if you want to be a part of that video. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our first response to our question from last week, which again was, what are the takeaways from 2023 that we're going to use moving forward in 2024? Let's look at the first one here. I have only been back in the hobby a few years, but this thing, the big hard thing I learned, is to stop chasing the flavor of the month and to just collect things that bring me joy. I might not have the most amazing collection today, but I know that 13-year-old me would have been over the moon to have the collection that I have today. Another commenter says, one big takeaway from 2023 is one thing I should have already known and have implemented. That is, do not chase the flavor of the week or month, aka the overhyped rookie, and collect what I like and enjoy. The collapse of the Mac Jones market and what happened with Wander Franco are good examples of why not to buy into the hype. So 2 people said something very, very similar. In fact, some of the language even used was very similar, and I think it's so smart. I think a lot of us are this last year, I feel like there were so many instances of these hot young prospects that sell for lots of money having an absolute implosion on their cards. Whether it be Wander Franco, or whether it be Josh Giddey, or whether it be, you know, heck, Trey Lance and Mac Jones, and, you know, you can go down the list of just quarterbacks that were the hot card a couple of years ago, and now they're backups or third strings or on the trading block. And it's something, it was like a very strong reminder to us about that ultra modern market. At least it was to me, and at least it sounds like it was to a couple of you. When players have passed, when we're talking about vintage guys, their career is over and they may even be gone and have passed on, those guys aren't going to have a bunch of surprises like we're having with the John Morants of the world. And it's so tempting. I mean, I get it. It is so very tempting to want to buy a box of cards, to want to buy a pack of cards. I mean, every time I walk into Target and I see those cards hanging over there, I feel them pulling me toward them. But it's just like when I walk through a casino and you see the rolling numbers for how big the jackpot has gotten. And you're like, you know, I got $10. Why don't I throw my $10 in there? And 99% of the time you lose all your money. And then afterwards you go, that was dumb. Just like when you go to Target and you buy the new cards, or you get into a bidding war on eBay, or you go to a card show and you buy that young prospect, and then 6 months later, they're the third string quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And what happens is you get mad at yourself. It's just what we do. It's just what we do. It's tempting because the potential, just like when I pull the slot machine, the potential is I could hit that giant jackpot and it could change so much. And that blaster box over there, it could have a one-of-one superfractor that's been signed by the young prospect, and I could just sell it. And then I could buy all the cards I really want. It's so tempting. But I totally agree. 2023 absolutely slapped a bunch of people across their face of why that's so risky. And it's certainly very risky, as a lot of those collectors can tell you. My direction for 2024 will definitely be more intentional.
and I will be focusing on auctions and not buy it nows, as the buy it now prices have not come down much in my opinion, but the auctions are where you have the big savings. Just my 2 cents.
Oh man, I love this response. You know, it's like I go to card shows just like, most of us. And I probably am able to go to about, I don't know, 8 to 10, probably 10 shows a year. This last year I went to about 10 shows, and we know the market is down. We know cards are down, and that's just part of the deal. But like, you see the same dealers repetitively at different shows. Like, they go, oh, I'm going to the Sacramento show, so I'm going to see these guys. I'm going to the Bay Area show. I'm going to see these guys. Like, you kind of get to recognize a handful of them, and you kind of know some of the cards that they have. And not for all of them. Certainly not for all of them. But for most of them, the prices on those cards, even the big name cards, even the expensive cards have come down quite a bit. The prices have not changed. It's the same price tag, the same holder, it's the same deal. And it's like, when the housing market went way down a few years ago, if someone's like, nope, I'm only selling my house for $600,000, even though the exact same model across the street just sold for $400,000. Like, you're not gonna sell it. Like, you have it on the market, but it's not really for sale because you're not pricing things where things are actually selling at. Will you sell some things? I suppose. But if you're like a dealer who's going to shows and you're paying table fees, so you get a couple of tables, say they're $150 each, so you spent $300 for the day. Yeah, I mean, you want to sell at least $300 worth of stuff. But if you're selling your stuff at 2020 and 2021 prices in 2023 and now 2024, like, you're not really selling stuff. You're just like a museum that we get to look at your stuff. It's not a gallery where things are for sale. It's a museum where we're just looking at it. And when you look at a lot of the buy it now prices, I think a lot of those cards, the price was set 2 years ago at the buy it now, and they've just not updated them. They just haven't changed the prices. So like, you'll see a card and you'll be like, oh my gosh. And it's just because the listing is renewing, right? It's like 30 days or whatever ran out. And so it automatically relists. And you're like, oh my gosh, they want $400 for a $240 card? Like, how would they think that's going to sell? They haven't changed the prices. Now, there are obviously some buy it now prices that are accurate. I mean, for me, when I put a card up and buy it now or it relists, I check the recent comps to be competitive. But a lot of people don't do that. So a lot of us, I get, just wanting to do a buy it now. Like, I like that card. I want that card. I'm just going to buy it. But you should at least kind of comp it, because a lot of those are old prices and they're not anywhere near what things are selling for. And that's one of the reasons I like doing, the purchases of the month under, $50 in the 50s and the 60s that I put out each month, is because it shows you the quality of the cards that are now falling into that price range. It was you couldn't get that kind of stuff, 2 years ago for $50 or under $50. Like, you couldn't even sniff those cards for that price. But now you're like, oh my gosh, that type of card is now selling for under $50. I need to start paying more attention to that. And they're almost always auctions. I think the point of focusing hardest on the auctions makes a lot of sense. That's not to say that all buy it nows aren't a good deal. There are buy it nows that are good deals. There are buy it nows where the card condition is exceptional for the grade. And it's worth every penny of the buy it now price. I buy stuff at Buy It Now all the time. But most of the deals tend to be auctions right now, because that's where two people are willing to pay that price. A Buy It Now, you might be the only person willing to pay that price. But again, there are deals on Buy It Now. I'm not saying don't ever do a Buy It Now, but I think the point of focusing, being more intentional and focusing on Buy It Nows, or on auctions instead of Buy It Nows, makes a lot of sense.
My biggest lesson to take forward into 2024 is a better understanding of when to be patient and when to act fast. This past year, I have gained a better grasp on what cards come around often and which ones I might not see often in my price range. I have learned that I can hang tight and wait for a deal on cards that will come around again soon. But some things, it's best to just bite the bullet and overpay a bit for the rare stuff I really want. That lesson will be one I really try to take into 2024.
It's interesting that you say this, because that's one of my biggest takeaways this year too. And I think the reason that it's a bigger takeaway for me is because the things I've been buying lately, now not all of it, but a lot of the stuff that I've been buying lately is older pre-war stuff that just doesn't come up nearly as often because the populations of them are much, much lower. So when you find a grade that works for you and it's got the eye appeal that works for you, and it's not a Buy It Now price that's way above what it's worth, like way above what it's worth, sometimes you just got to act. You're like, oh, now is not the time. I wasn't planning on paying that bill because I just had to put new tires on my truck. Now with that, I would say we should always have money squirreled away for cards that's different than the money for life. So don't ever use life money on cards. Don't ever use food money, electric bill, car repair money, gasoline. Don't use money like that on cards. And that's just my take. Use card money. So set some money aside, and that's for cards, and then life is for life. But there are times that cards come up and it looks good. You're like, I can't really afford more than a card in that 2 to 3 range that PSA or SGC assigned. So I need to find one that's been assigned a 2 or a 3 or below that really I like the looks of. And then when it comes up, and this happened to me not that long ago, there was an Eddie Collins T206 portrait card, beautiful card. It was really well centered. And I believe it was a 2. And it was really nice. And I bid on it, and I didn't bid enough. It was an auction. I didn't bid enough. I bid about what it was worth. And somebody else bid a little bit more than that because I was the second highest bidder. This is probably 9 months ago. It might have even been almost a year ago at this point. And I didn't get the card. And I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't just go up a little bit. Now, it's possible that the other bidder could have bid $200 higher and I still wouldn't have gotten it. But there aren't a lot of cards in that grade that I like the looks of as much as I liked the looks of that one. And I definitely wish I had, bid a little bit higher. If it's a card like a 1960 Willie McCovey, where there are lots of them, if it's a 79 Ozzie Smith, if it's an 84 Don Mattingly, those cards are coming up a lot. They're coming up frequently. Ricky Henderson rookie card, right? These cards come up a lot. But when it's a card like a T206 Eddie Collins in a 2, that's your price range, that's a really nice looking one, it's probably worth overpaying a little bit because there aren't a lot of twos out there. There aren't a lot of the card out there. There aren't a lot of twos. There aren't a lot of ones. There's not a lot of 1.5s. There's not a lot of 2.5s. And the ones that are usually not that nice. So if you find a nice looking two of a card that there aren't a lot of, you kind of just got to pay up. If it's an 84 Topps Don Mattingly, I would say only buy it if it's a great deal. Because otherwise you can wait until tomorrow when 3 more auctions end on the card. But not on a T206 Eddie Collins card. That card in that grade with that eye appeal, there's not many of them. So when it comes up, you do absolutely have to pounce. And those cards that are more frequent, those cards that come up all the time, and we know which ones they are, those cards we can be patient on. But the rare ones, when you see them, you got to pay up.
Something I embraced even more in 2023 that I'll use in 2024 is when attending larger card shows, look at everything I can and don't just focus on the familiar stuff. I found so many new types of cards in 2023 simply by browsing, whether I made a purchase at a show or expanding my online browsing options.
So here's what I love. Here's what I love about this answer. Because I love this answer. I think we all can grow by taking this advice and taking this from 2023 into the new year. We get comfortable. We say, oh, I'm a set builder, and right now I'm working on the 63 and 64 sets. So if I go to a table and there aren't any 63s or 64, I'm not even going to look. I'm just going to keep on walking. Oh, that guy's got a box of a bunch of different vintage cards, but they're not from the players that I collect, so I'm not even going to look at them. See, the reason I think that we don't look at them is we all want to feel like we know what we're looking at. We want to know what we're talking about. We want to go into a space where we're comfortable. I mean, if you sit down at a dinner party and you're a big NBA fan, and a couple of the guys there are talking about sports, you're going to want to naturally steer the conversation towards the NBA because that's where you're comfortable. And then if it's about the NBA, the conversation, then you're going to want to talk. You're going to be involved. You're going to be talking because you feel knowledgeable about it. You're confident in what you're talking about. But if they're talking about Bundesliga soccer, which is the German soccer league, you're probably not going to say a lot. But I would say, you know, this sounds interesting, but I don't know a lot about it. Tell me more about it. What are the good teams? Who are the good players? How does it work? Why are you guys so into it? Share that. And it's the same thing with cards. You know, I used to appreciate pre-war cards. I used to appreciate T205s. I used to appreciate the caramel cards. I used to appreciate the 38 Gaudy heads and the 33 Gaudis and the 34 Gaudis. I always appreciated that stuff. I would go to shows and I would look at the case, but I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't ask about them. I would just look at them like it was a museum. And it's intimidating when you're very comfortable. I mean, I'm most comfortable in the 1950s. That is by far where I'm most knowledgeable. And so when you go before that, when you go to the 30s or the, you know, first 20 years of the century, you're like, I don't really know what I'm talking about so much. And I'm going back, you know, a couple of years. Again, I could recognize, I could see the card and go, oh yeah, that's a portrait Ty Cobb. He's also got, you know, this other couple of Ty Cobbs in addition to the two portraits. Like I knew about them, but I wasn't like comfortable in them. And then a couple of years, I just finally said, let's just break down this barrier and really start leaning into it and asking questions and watching videos and reading articles and asking questions of dealers. I mean, even these pirate cards that I keep talking about. And I'll show some on my pickups for the December video because, of course, I picked a couple up this last month. But I love these Allen and Ginter 1888 Pirates of the Spanish Main set. I love them. They're beautiful to me. I didn't even know they existed 6 months ago. I was at a card show in Hayward, California, and I was talking to a guy who's from the UK and came over from the UK, still had a real strong accent, and he had all of these English tobacco cards, and he's telling me about it, and I spent an hour at his table just asking him questions and just talking to him, and well, tell me about this, and tell me about that. And then he pulls over this pirate card, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. What is this? And he's like, oh, I'll sell it to you for cheap, and he started telling me about the set. And now I love them. And if I had just walked by that table, because his table was set up right next to my buddy Craig. My dealer buddy Craig, who I've bought stuff from before, I've shared his information before, was right next to him. And then I walked in, and those were the first two tables, and I went to this other guy, and I spent an hour at his table. I would have been way more comfortable looking at Craig's table on all this stuff that I know about. But instead, I spent an hour learning about these different sets, not just pirate sets, but, you know, he had some cricket cards, he had some old boxing cards, he had lots of old tobacco stuff. And I just learned from a lifelong collector. And I'm like, well, what are you really into? And he's like, well, there's these sets of editors. Like, editors? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, there's this set because back in the day, editors were like a big deal. Like editors of like books and newspapers and stuff, I guess. And like his favorite set is these tobacco cards of editors. And I'm like, I never even heard of such a thing. I think that this is a really good suggestion. And even when I think of who knows a lot about turn of the century cards, you know, one of the people I think of is Orlando, right? From A Collector's Dream. Another person I think of is Ryan Nolan from Breakout Cards. Those are two that just like the first two that pop into my mind. And if you've ever watched one of Ryan Nolan's card show videos, he's got one of those cameras, not a phone, but whatever they're called, cameras on his chest. And he's always asking questions. He's saying, tell me about these. I'm not familiar with these. Tell me about them. And the dealer will teach him. And he does that all the time. See, it's actually a strength to say, I don't know about this. Can you teach me about this? That's a strength. Because then you can acquire information from somebody who knows a lot about it. I love this answer. The next time you're at a show and you see some cards that you're not familiar with, instead of just walking by and leaning away, lean in. Talk to the dealer. Ask the dealer questions about it. Learn about them. You might end up finding your next passion within the hobby. I love this answer. Lean in, not out. Ask questions and learn about something you're not familiar with. Step out of your comfort zone, away from the thing you already know about, and into something that you don't.
I can't limit myself to just one thing for the things I've learned this last year. I've learned that PSA is not the only acceptable grading company. The ease, quickness, quality, and customer relations of SGC is very pleasant. The other thing, I have always been a corner freak, with much less regard to centering. Eye appeal for me has lent itself for me to scrutinize the centering of a prospective card more.
Oh man, see this is an interesting one. And I specifically want to talk about the grading companies thing. See, I was in a lot of us that were collecting during the junk wax era, which I heard somebody talk about that term as a negative term the other day. I'm like, it is a negative term and it shouldn't be. It's not junk wax, it's my childhood. But anyway, there were a lot of us that started collecting in the mid to late 80s. A lot of us are in that group. A lot of these people left the hobby before grading really took off, because grading really took off in the late 90s, largely because of eBay. See, you could buy a card on eBay now, and there was a third party who basically said, it's about like in this condition. It's in this sort of condition, because they authenticated it and they evaluated it. And it made it so much easier to buy cards online, sight unseen, other than a picture, on eBay. So card grading took off. And early on, it was really PSA. And PSA had a great marketing move by getting that Honus Wagner graded, which a lot of people believe it to be an altered card. But anyway, it's got serial number 1, right? That Honus Wagner card. And, you know, it was in the Gretzky collection, so it's in the news, all that stuff. And so what ends up happening is grading blows up. And then right after that, a couple of other companies jumped in. One of them was SGC. And SGC at that time, for most of the collectors at that time, it was like, no. Why would you go to SGC when there's PSA? PSA is the only option. That's what a lot of people said. It's sort of like, you know, these people that grew up as like, you know, Ford people, where just generations of their family, the only automobiles they've ever driven are Ford. And then there's other people, for generations, they've only been Chevy people, right? Chevrolet people, General Motors people. And then there are other people who are like, I'd never buy a foreign car, right? And then there's some people out there like, well, I'll only buy Toyotas, or I'll only buy Hondas. And there becomes this brand loyalty where it's anything other than your brand is just junk. That's the thought process. And so for these people who've been collecting for a long, long time, through the beginning of the grading thing, it's PSA. PSA is the company. And it was always like, no, you don't go to SGC for your good stuff. And it's very hard to change somebody's opinion. I mean, I've heard Mike Moynihan say he thinks SGC is a better company and is run better than PSA. SGC, he thinks, is run better than PSA. He said if there was a new person coming into the hobby, starting their collection, he would recommend SGC. But his collection is 99.9% PSA because he's been in the hobby for a long time, and that's, I get it. So a lot of people who got in during the junk wax era kind of got out before the grading thing. So then during the COVID boom, when people got back in, they're looking around and they're going, man, why would anyone go with PSA? They're slower, they're more expensive, and their customer service isn't that good. Why are people going with PSA? SGC is cheaper, faster, and nicer. Well, the old timers, the guys that have been around for a long, long time, who have a ton of stuff in the set registry, are addicted to the set registry, are like, no, it's PSA or nothing. And these guys that got back into the hobby and for the first time are learning about the grading thing, they're like, what do you mean PSA? PSA's got all these problems. SGC's great. So they don't understand the addiction to PSA. And people that have been in the hobby for all these years, they don't understand the addiction to SGC because they still have the stigma of SGC from 1997. And it's really, really hard to change somebody's opinion on that. And I do believe if you're a vintage collector and you want to send cards in to get graded, which is a whole different debate, I really believe we have two really good options. And I really believe that SGC is doing and has done a lot of things to make themselves look way more attractive than PSA. PSA's turnaround times are embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It is inexcusable how long their turnaround times are. But the resale value is really high on PSA, and SGC's catching up. And I think the reason they're catching up is because they're finally getting some people to break down and say, I'm fed up, PSA. I'm fed up. SGC treats me well. They charge me less. They get me my cards quickly. I don't want to be away from my cards, and SGC is way better at that. I think we have two options if you're a grading person. And again, that's a whole different debate. And I do think we absolutely put way too much value on the grade that's assigned. I absolutely think that if we get our submission back and we think it's a 7 and it gets a 5.5, that has ruined way too many people's days. The card is the same exact card. The only difference is someone else has a slightly different opinion of that card. It's amazing how we can let someone else's opinion control our happiness and the way we look at a card. But again, that's a whole nother discussion. But even the longtime guys, even, Mike Moynihan, my dad, a lot of these guys that have been longtime PSA guys, they certainly see the validity and the legitimacy of SGC. No doubt about it. Man, great responses to the question. Great way to start the year. If you're watching parades today, if you're watching football games today, I hope you enjoy yourself. I hope that you are one of the many people who get the day off. And I am so thankful for all of you who have helped create this amazing midlife card community where we get to share ideas, give opinions, comment back and forth, because I really think we've built an awesome group here. I really think we have something special here. This is not a place where you're just listening to me talk to you and you're just consuming it. I really believe that this is an interactive channel. This is a place where your pickups are valued as much as mine, where your opinions are shared just as much as mine. That's the difference. That's what we're doing here. You all have a ton of expertise. You all have a ton of experience. And that's what makes this so much fun, is that we interact back and forth. Please keep doing that. Please continue to leave comments. Please continue to ask questions. Please continue to respond to these weekly questions, which, by the way, our question for this week for all of you is this. This is January 1st of 2024. If we are to fast forward to New Year's Eve of 2024, we're going all the way past everything, and it's now the last day of 2024. What are the 3 cards that you expect to add to your collection over the next 365 days? 3 cards that are not in your collection right now, but you fully expect them to be in your collection in 365 days. And why would you choose those cards? I can't wait to hear what your 3 biggest targets are for this calendar year. Let me know in the comments below.